All right. Thanks for the introduction, Jim, and thanks all for listening in. Let me try the hardest part of the presentation, and that is to get it up and running for you over this system. Um, Now I just have to find the right window. And Jim, if you can give me a heads up when I say like full screen, that you're seeing it okay.
Okay, I can see it full screen now. It's looking good.
All right. Thank you. So today, the title that, a couple of weeks ago, I sent out the impact of GenAI on developer and software delivery lifecycle. And a lot of people will wonder how it will be around pipelines and stuff like that. I'll be honest, I don't know yet. But by the end of the presentation, you will know more and I'll let you decide. So it might be different than what you think right now that we're doing. I give this presentation updated over time and time. Like I put the horses there. In the beginning, they were like real horses. Now they're robotic horses. Are they kind of the horses that are the apocalypse? There's a little bit of mist, so we don't know yet. So I thought that was fitting for the journey that we're on. We are on for 102 slides, so bear with me and please stay with the networking. I'm also happy to chat after the presentation there. So let me start with this slide. It's been an amazing ride, 2.5 years. We came from an LLM to LLM with agents, team of agents, and then even more like shared knowledge and so on. I'm not going to bore you with like 17 different like tools, but it's just been an advancement of the technology, like super faster than I've ever seen in my career. And I started at the beginning of the internet, so I've seen a few things around the block. I started curating, similar to the CNCF, a bunch of tools under this link, which you might like, at landscape AI native dev.io. I think in the beginning of the year, we started at roughly 100. Now, like even this slide is old. We started like, we were around like 400, 500 tools. All tools specifically for somewhere in the coding cycle of software delivery. So you might have fun checking them out. I'll leave the link is in the deck. But what we kind of hope as the industry is kind of mimic what we had with self-driving cars. Like we hope the agents resolve all the way up to full autonomy. And in the industry, there's a lot of money, and you hope to kind of like throw a lot of money at the problem in the hope to solve it as such that we got full automation. That was similar with cars. We still haven't like it everywhere, like self-driving cars at places there are. So we're still on the beginning of that journey to full automation. So don't let anybody fool you. We're not there yet, but we're kind of getting step by step along the way. New technology bring new laws, and I'm as much as an expert as others. It just exists no longer than a couple of years. So you can't have the 10 years or 20 years experience. But so everybody's kind of like an expert, and everybody shares stories, and that's also why we're here, because kind of like by telling stories, things we learned, others can learn as well. And I hope you return this. And community like this is a great place to do that. Like, who am I? Most people kind of know me from my work around DevOps and DevSecOps, but I kind of like say got bored with this. Now I am trying to figure out like what the impact is of AI on the software delivery cycle. I am a content creator at the AI native dev.io. Here's also my LinkedIn. If you want to send me a message after kind of the presentation, whether you like that, whether I missed something, whether I should add something, please do. But that's enough about me. What most people kind of are thinking about is now called AI native. And we've seen this with cloud native. In the beginning, everyone was like, okay, let's slap a little bit of extra on what we do right now. We didn't kind of fully understand until a few years in what the flow, what the new paradigm shift was. And I hope to kind of enlighten you today with the paradigm shifts or the patterns that I'm seeing that kind of are changing the way we work around software delivery right now. I don't have to tell you that the number of code commits is just improving insanely, and it just will keep kind of increasing more and more. Our tasks are changing. I'll get to that. But every time there's a new technology, some pieces of our existing task will become easier. Some will be defunct. Some will are new to this. So this unbundling task is something that happens with every new technology, and now with AI. And of course, everybody's still thinking do we still need the humans? Is it still relevant? I already mentioned we're not at the point that there's full autonomy, and there will be new jobs that come up in the future. What that is, we don't know yet. Is that training the AI? This is a kind of a gimmicky example. Maybe we're the trainers and the AI get better eventually, but we don't know, right? So what I'm going to describe today is what I distilled to 4 patterns, and now I'm going to explain the first pattern, how our role is changing. And you might have noticed that what I'm going to describe is from producing code, you become the manager of agents managing the code process generation. So that's my first pattern that I'm going to describe. Now, the problem that you might have already seen if you use a little bit of AI, Copilot or similar, or one of those popular tools, it's great. The coding time you get a lot more faster, but the review times go up. So you become that manager, that janitor that has to do a lot. So the cognitive load of you not writing the code anymore, but you having to review the code is actually quite substantial and something we need to think about at the new way of working. So tools are trying to reduce that cognitive load. They explain that not just with a simple diff or an elaborate chat view, but they try to distill it into what matters. And you see summaries popping up. When you write a function, it's kicking a summary or the diff, and it's trying to help us reduce that cognitive load. Now, there are also other things. It's becoming more complex. It's not just one file. It's going to be 5 files, 10 files, and that's just going to increase. So we need a way to also break down this task step by one. First, review this file. That's dependent for the next one. So tools are guiding us through that workflow of doing a better review. And unfortunately, I don't have the videos here, but think of that, why does it need to be a code review? Why can't it just be a diagram? And you see on the diagram, maybe your architecture diagram, what has changed, what is the thing that it tried to do. So there's other kinds of visualizations than just code diffs. Now, this is another example by Google. Their coding agent Jules. It generates a code cost, like a podcast of everything that the agent was doing. So another way of helping us with the review while we're managing that team of agents and the results. Now, this brings up the concept of having a moldable developer environment. So not your IDE with the code, but it adapts itself to, do I need to do a review? Do I need to do an edit? Do I need to do anything more specific in a domain, like an architectural diagram? So that concept is something you'll see pop up to help us switch and do a better job instead of just one tool that does everything for us. And you can even take this more broader, and I'm sure you've heard of vibe coding, dynamically creating apps. Why are the agents not vibe coding a review app? And this is maybe more anecdotal. Somebody who said okay, prove me that it's working. And then the AI started building actually the proof to do the review. So it's not that far from something that we could do. There just hasn't been a focus to have this review because everybody's still very focused on the code generation itself. Now, imagine it wants to help us, and in that level of autonomy, it's not only us reviewing, say yes, yes, yes all the time, but it has a mechanism that says, I'm going to auto commit, and you just revert. So it's like flipping the table by saying, by default, you commit, and I revert if I see it needed. So that's an interesting twist that is happening there. And of course, if it does auto commit, you want to do rollbacks, much like you would do your git commit rollback. But in this case, maybe it's more complex. It's like a 5 change data, all the stuff, similar to kind of ephemeral environments that we did in build things. But right now, it's the simple thing of generating checkpoints. And also, while the agent is building, it has an internal way of kind of doing that checkpointing. So I say, it was good until here, and then kind of resume from there. So it's an important thing of becoming that review system. And of course, we can't be there all the time, so it should send us kind of notifications. Of course, we're already overloaded with all the notifications of social media. So what does one agent more or less kind of do in that system? But we'll get that more and more asynchronous notifications from the systems because we can't keep babysitting this all the time. And maybe you kind of like want to have your agents do frequent status updates. So it's a more longer running thing, and it just kind of keeps you informed. This is a very simple thing, even in a prompt, kind of keep me up to date by changing the title of maybe the window. But you get the idea. Some kind of notification system you can do with that. And with all those notifications and things changing and even auto committing, we get into a new kind of space of problems. Like, what do we allow the AI to commit? What do we allow the AI to run? And it becomes like insanely more complex. And a lot of people will instantly say, like, well, it's too much of a hassle. But remember, that was with firewall setting all the rules. That was with permissions on files. So agents, unfortunately, like seem to go the same way with people, in that people just give them all access. Accidents to be happening, we probably should get better at this, but it's a new set of problems that is arriving from those agents working on our code base. And another thing is also kind of like, who's doing this? Is it actually going out through a third party? It should act as us. So we have an OAuth thing, but kind of an OAuth of the agents going off to other systems. Yet another problem, not just kind of on the security, but this part of the security is doing the authorization of other systems that it uses. Now, another part of doing kind of more of the manager function, not just the code reviewing, but I'm going to look at how much did you use, much like a manager doing a budget control. And we get more and more of those like max plan usages that tools say, like, it's, of course, there's a cap, but you can get like a lot of things done under max usage. In the beginning, it was not enough, and you would be more metered. Now they're getting to more of a flat kind of fee to do certain things, which is interesting. And this was a funny story. Is a person that, Claude Code, for example, when you code, it kind of has more of a quota that gets reset after X amount of times, like after 5 hours. So this developer said, well, I'm going to optimize my sleep pattern to kind of keep coding with the agent more efficiently, right? I'm not saying this is, what everybody will be doing, but it's interesting how people are trying to adapt to this new reality of the agent's coding. And by just setting that restriction of 5 hours, like, people start adapting and working differently. Now, reviewing, we don't like it too much. So we probably need to spice it up with a better way. Maybe with the vibe coding of the review will help, but it's boring. And some people are not kind of interested in doing this. They just want to do the craft of the coding, and they don't care about the business requirements too much. So that's kind of another thing that like a split between people do want to keep doing it as a craft, and the others kind of seeing more of like, oh, I do it the review because it will give me like more functionality. It will give me more business value to that. But right now, it is also a certain slow factor to this. Like, do a prompt, wait for it to finish, then do it again. And even with multiple instances, it is just slow. So that reviewing, it feels a little bit like babysitting. So it's still not kind of a very good part of doing the review. Now, I already mentioned this. There's going to be an over-reliance on just saying accept, because of the boring. It's almost like a human factor that you blindly accept because you get bored and you don't want to do this all the time. This is a study, and it mentions that in over the weekend, people accept a lot more code from the AI, and that's because they don't want to bother. It's just say yes, yes. So definitely kind of a potential risk in there. And it's going to be fun to do the fun postmortems, right? Now we just had the code reviews. We don't understand the code too much, but imagine it just gets pushed autonomously to production. Like, what agent actually did it? Who's responsible? And that's really going to be a problem more and more. We're not there yet. I haven't seen a code that like completely does it for to delivery to prod from an agent autonomously. But yeah, accidents are going to happen. Let's say it like that. And in a way, all the devs have now become ops, right? They have to deal with the problems. They have to understand how the system works, that they didn't do themselves. Interesting thing. And we also become like the human that have to kind of be the catch-all and the cleanup, the janitor. So there's a little bit of excitement of bringing the business value. And on the other hand, there's also the chores of us kind of like keeping the system running. And that won't go away right now today. And so that coding flow, where initially it was more like, I'm going to think what I'm going to do, and then I'm just start coding, it becomes almost like a dance, right? First I describe, then it does, oh, then I did this, then I did that. So there is a little bit of a breakdown, but the annoying part is that there's a cost of you getting slower at reviewing and not doing the coding anymore. So that kind of cost is something we've seen before in the industry as well. Kind of make one relation to DevOps in this story is in the beginning of the journey of DevOps, there was a lot about infrastructure as code. So imagine that was the code generation, automation, kind of delivery systems. Then we had like prevent the tests, the failures, CI/CD, got better at like monitoring. Eventually, we started to re-architect our designs for maybe partition things, microservices. Maybe we're going to see that with coding. If we have more microservices, the impact is smaller, but we still need to coordinate. So that's going to be the same. We're going to have to do observability, and I'll come back to that later in the presentation. But part of the chaos engineering was that if you have a pipeline that's fully automated, that works most of the time, when an incident happens, you still need to be prepared, right? And it's going to be the same with the code review. The more and more we get like acceptance and better at it, the more we have to train, similar to a fireman being ready when the fire happens. And that's kind of a journey that probably will happen with kind of the code generation tools as well, as the way they get better over time. Now, this was up until now kind of more producer to manager, so a shift that a lot of people initially using AI in coding actually are feeling. So there are progress, the review, and we're getting there. Now, this is just the implementation part, right? What I actually want to do now is take it a step earlier, because we want to kind of, instead of just doing the low-level implementation, we want to specify the intent. And the people in kind of organizations specifying the intent are usually kind of an architect that designs that together with maybe like a design team or QA filling up the requirements. So we're getting now kind of like earlier in the value stream right now in the typical process. Now, what does that currently, where's the impact in that? If you use a coding tool, you might have come across like writing rules and kind of prompts in kind of those tools. And think of them as reusable snippets. And that's great. It's like you express what you want, not just in a chat conversation, but you kind of reuse those pieces in your kind of prompts in there. So it's a very light way of a specification, some of the rules. Now, what people then started doing is they created like this more like elaborate markdown files where they kind of coded like good practices or the way they wanted to have their directory structure or the functionality. So very light, a spec.md specification file that you would create and that you would pass along as a pre-populated prompt when the agent is working. So that was kind of the first initial very simple step of writing specs, or like specifying our intent. So what we move is, instead of kind of doing more of the chat on the side, or kind of like the highlighting or the tab completion, that we start like, if we do a task, we write the spec, we give that to the agent, it does a planning, and it generates the code. So that's where kind of the industry in that piece is happening. Now, what you can also put images in the spec, right? You can specify your end-to-end testing. There's a lot of things also, like visually you could do. So don't think as those things as just kind of text-based. Like images do kind of convey a lot of information to in the specifications as well. Much like a human, it's sometimes like easier to express and convey the message. So what you then saw is people starting those things on their own computer, on their own kind of like development environment. They started to share this, much like installable kind of packages, but like they put this remote kind of reusable prompts is currently right now maybe a very popular thing. This is only one example, but you'll find many for different tools, kind of like that, those directory styles. And as the tools you're experimenting, what you would have found is, well, Cursor does it like this, Copilot like that, Aider like this. So, and they all use a different syntax. And thanks to more of the open source, people started like creating converters from one format to the other, adapters, interfaces. So great. But what you also now start seeing is that the industry is actually standardizing as well. If you think in cloud terms, the S3 thing that everybody was kind of like AWS defined now became a standard protocol. And now we have an agents MD instead of a Claude MD, and so on. So people are kind of like standardizing as we go along, which is a great thing in the industry to do. Now, we've moved from explaining specifications to generating the code out of that by using an agent or a generation. But there's also the other side. Like, you do also want the direction of having code that is being imported or that is being converted to a specification. Maybe it's legacy code, maybe it's a piece you don't understand well, but kind of adapting this. Imagine on the right, this is a Java app, and you want to kind of port this into Python. So you kind of import the specification, convert the specification, and then just change the line. Don't do it in Java, but do it in Python or something like that. And the other great thing of specifications is, if you write something down, and you probably saw this if you have like a shared Google Doc or anything that people are writing together, it creates a certain alignment. There's a discussion that kind of happens, and people align around this. Now, this quote says, specifications align humans. It's also aligning AI, which is great. And it is great to see that message being brought by OpenAI there as well. Another company that's kind of like doing this is Kiro. And Kiro on this piece on the right is a standard pattern on how to describe kind of their structure specifications. It feels a little bit like BDD, but you can use any of kind of the patterns to describe this. But like, you don't only write specifications, but you can also write examples, really good kind of in specifications as well. And it's not only about like how you want to build the code, what the code should do. It's also how you do things, like your knowledge, your GitHub workflow, the way you kind of approach a certain thing to build code. First, I'm going to create a name, then I'm going to scaffold this, and so on. So you can also capture that knowledge. It's not just about like how I want my code to look like. It's the workflow that you capture as well. And speaking of workflows, one of the interesting projects that is happening is GitHub is also thinking about continuous AI. So kind of those workflows, but more in the CI/CD land, so not just in the code land. they're also thinking about how to reuse and kind of how to specify this in natural language as well. And imagine you have all those rules, and it's great that it's being generated, whether it's code or your infrastructure. You can also use this more of testing and observability. Remember when we had BDD cucumber things, and then we allowed us to actually turn that into more behavioral kind of observability and monitoring tools. Kind of there's a link between specifications testing in a way that can be reused. This is a great video where the rules were specified and they were like applied everywhere in the SDLC at booking, and you only write those rules once in a certain form. And eventually what we hope is that when we specify things with examples, the AI code generation becomes more reliable. So it's not about just, I give a prompt and the code is being generated. The model is great or not. If I give it better context, or actually I take the time to explain what I really want, it becomes more reliable as such. And Tesla is one of the companies that has been working in the spec-driven development for a while now. Now, what goes into the spec? I mentioned the product, maybe some design and architecture, the way we do things, snippets or prompts, and what is really cool, imagine you've been vibe coding, right? And that's great. But at the end of the chat, you just say, agent, can you write me a spec with everything you learned actually in our conversation? Very easy way to kind of go from conversational to more of a specification that is being written in there. Now, as the specifications grow and become bigger, and the problem is that we can't just say, here's all kind of the things that I want you to build. Context window might be not big enough, or it doesn't make sense. It's like overloading a person to say, you have to do everything at once, right? So it is better for the AI and for the humans to kind of like break down the specifications when they need to be implemented in step and tasks that need to be done. And what you'll see appearing is kind of like tools that take the PRD, the product requirements document, or the specifications, and start breaking it down into smaller chunks, and then send it actually to the agent to do the implementation. Now, other tools also have planning modes where they say, instead of just jumping into the generation of the code, they say, please think things through, please kind of make a plan before, and then start it. Quite an improvement in results in the end if you do that. And what will happen then is those smaller tasks almost become a Kanban board while the agent is implementing task 1, task 2, and you see them move across the lanes, and it updates the logs in the tickets along the way. What was funny, like for those who remember the announcement of Devin, everybody was kind of laughing, like, yeah, autonomous engineer, that's great. But what you see in that right now is that instead of having your local Kanban board, it just uses your linear or kind of Jira ticketing system, and it interacts, sees a ticket come in, it jumps on it, starts building. So kind of that is getting more into the autonomous flow. Like, we don't have to tell it to do it. It's just like takes the initiative and starts to improve, even update the requirements and write improved and specifications in the tickets as well. Now, ultimately, right, people might think like, oh, well, I'm just going to describe what I need. And so I'm just only needing program manager to do that because I'm basically managing the tasks that it needs to do. But we already mentioned we still have to do the review. So that was pattern 1, and we're here at pattern 2 as well. And then if you really want to do this like a professional, you just do it from your phone. You manage your agents. You say, yes, I like it. Yes, it's a good ticket, and it just goes off. These are just like 2 fun kind of ways of dealing with remote agents and like kind of combining this from wherever you are. And you don't even need to have a laptop. It's just doing the work for you. All right, so showing you from the initial kind of like we become more managers, because we have to review, deal with the errors. We write better specifications. That's kind of the second pattern. But how do we actually know what to write in the specification? How do we know what we want to build? And that's the third pattern. That is from delivery to discovery. So it is in a way that you need to come up with ideas, and that's what I'm going to describe. So pattern 3. So there's no animation here, but Lovable was one of the first that was kind of creating prototypes and building UI prototypes just with some kind of prompts and to build this. And it was great. And a lot of people within the business loved it because they didn't have to go to a coder. They could kind of like experiment, build almost like a working prototype, a working app. And it was really helpful and getting their value to them. Then kind of it became a little more robust. People gave it more designs, like graphical designs, and then it started implementing those things in Lovable. So that kind of became a little bit of the same thing. Specifications that kind of go in and kind of are being built by the agents. Then Andrej Karpathy, known in the AI industry, call it vibe coding. Right. So if I'm doing prompting things all the time and I just say I accept all, that's called vibe coding. Right. And obviously there was a lot of controversy about this. Like, should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? And right, you have the vibe coders, right? Just YOLO, just do it. Maybe you have more of the rodeo folks, and then the people at companies that do not even have a choice, right? So things are moving, bad rap. But also vibe coding gets a lot of attention in the world. But vibe with specs, that becomes something different. And you want to think about like, why am I doing vibe coding? I'm writing disposable code where I'm discovering. So it's more like exploratory testing, or I'm going to explore an idea versus this is a durable code that needs to exist like for 10 years and it needs to be really robust for all the others. So that's a difference between the two worlds that you do. And I already mentioned Kiro from AWS. They kind of make that distinction in their UI. What do you want to do today? You want to vibe code? Okay, free chat, go for it. Or you want to code with specifications. And that's kind of like the difference of the choice that you make while you're doing this. The whole vibe coding is also being kind of having its own vendors, its own tools. GitHub Spark also came into that realm, not just Lovable. So people see this indeed as two modes. You can have two products, one for each of those things as well. But what is happening for the vibe coding? So I'm exploring things. And when I explore things, sometimes I want to say, well, generate me 3 options. Here's a tool from Vercel. Create me 3 landing pages of something. Oh, this one looks better. I'm going to pick that one. So kind of making those kind of like multiple solutions, multiple choices. And this is a graphical example, but maybe this has to, like, I want 3 ways to implement this algorithm. I want to have 3 ways that I can improve kind of the performance of this code. So it doesn't need to be on that matter. But the important part is I'm going to break off in multiple ways to implement the same thing. And, you can go as crazy as you can build this and then put it into production, and then the agent's actually optimizing this, doing A/B testing with the end user. But that's kind of like a far road ahead right now. Well, what is the important pattern is there's 2 types of parallelism. Either I want multiple variations, like I mentioned with the images of the website or the landing pages, or I want to do parallelism because I want to do 3 tasks at once, right? That parallelization is different because how do you know that the 3 tasks are discrete and won't be overlapping and there won't be any merge conflicts? The second one is more like 3 variations of the same thing. So people are exploring kind of the way of doing this, and it shifts from I'm going to babysit one agent doing this to, I want to like write a spec, but now I want to have the spec and have like multiple implementations to work on that. Like a lot of tools have been experimenting with this. First one I saw was Cursor. It tried to copy your local environment. They kind of stopped doing this. They felt like a developer environment is way too complex to clone. We need something different to handle that. They kind of even had their own mechanism. They call it an RCP server. So more of like, can I merge multiple remote things? So they started moving from something that was happening on your laptop to background agents that are now running in the cloud that kind of similar to your CI/CD environments, kind of have their own kind of clean environment to build from. Now, people have also been experimenting on this on their own computer. Imagine I have my Claude running, and in Claude you have hooks. If I hook into every time some code is being generated, like call a git commit, right? That's one way, but it pollutes a lot of things. Or you can use kind of Jujutsu, one of the newer kids on the block in version management, that like can take multiple kind of internal commits and then kind of do a bigger commit. It's almost like you start having a git commit cycle, but locally on your laptop for review, and then I go into the CI/CD commit workflow. So it's interesting, kind of like nudge and change. Now, the other technique that people have been doing is called Git work trees, and it's almost like it's cloning. It's not forking, but it's kind of like cloning it internally in multiple directories, and then it kind of starts merging back. Highly can kind of recommend this video by Indie DevDan on this, and will kind of give you great inspiration on doing that. Now, if you say ephemeral, separate environment, multiple environments, you might immediately think about Docker, right? So the founder of Docker is actually also starting a new company in Dagger, and the tool is Dagger that allows you to have multiple environments in containers and then kind of merge that back. So we get better isolations of agents doing certain of the code. Somebody still has to manage the containers, so that's going to happen as well. So there's still a job there. But you start seeing it becoming more complex instead of your code completion. We are now at a scale that is moving, that it's becoming its own infrastructure of coding, even on a laptop for a developer. And I mentioned, like, you have the specifications. You can obviously collaborate around that. I can also collaborate on having multiple experiments, giving feedback, giving comments, and kind of, it's an interesting way of, like I mentioned before, getting the humans to find the right solution. And once you have the right solution, you kind of have to want to help on writing the specification. So that alignment is also happening in a kind of vibe coding to spec coding transition. And then why have only the humans collaborate? You would have also the agents collaborate, of course, and I hope that there is not that much in this that kind of happens there. Now, that kind of was the third pattern. So we went to now discovering, instead of focusing on delivery, we are focusing on finding the best business value, finding the right UI, finding the right process, and that helps us in the prototyping phase as well. The last pattern is about capturing all the knowledge while we have been doing all those steps, because then it becomes reusable for the next things. And what is knowledge? Already mentioned, you could consider a prompt as a knowledge, your files as a knowledge, like anything that goes into the context, you probably could consider one form of knowledge in your company. Documentation becoming more important. This is a great tool, Context 7, where it actually keeps up-to-date documentation of different versions of certain libraries. And that means if I'm coding, it doesn't just use the LLM to generate the code, which might be outdated, or it might have multiple versions, and maybe it's hard, and it's coming up with functions that exist in the previous version, not the old version. So this is like an MCP server that actually links your version that you currently have to documentation that is there, and it greatly improves kind of the knowledge and of the agents, putting it into the right pieces into the context. Now, it's not only about documentation, it could also be about your, like, how you have your knowledge about your APIs and how that has changed and doing those commits. So like PRs, reviews, synchronization, change logs, they're also kind of documentation and knowledge. Maybe your incident responses are also like you want to bring them in so you're not repeating the same mistake when this is happening again. So lessons learned are being captured at various kind of different times in kind of your software delivery lifecycle as we're delivering the app to production. Maybe you want to learn from production. Maybe it has like 15,000 errors, or so you don't want to repeat the same mistake. Or maybe the function is being used by 100,000 users. So maybe your review could have a hint of you really having to review this because the impact is bigger. So that is other pieces of knowledge that you can bring to the agents as well. Now, one other way is not just bringing it to the agents, but it's also bringing it to the humans. Like I can turn a code base into lessons. How should learn a new code base? So the ramping, onboarding of new devs is going way faster in this. And what if the model actually helps you to have the right questions, the right answers, and it's being trained almost on a teaching mode, not at a generation mode. So that's really helpful in kind of understanding knowledge as a human of what is being done by the agents as well. So that often brings up the question, do we still need to understand the code? If I'm just writing the specs, everything will be solved. Yes, no. So you have the pros and the cons. I already mentioned, like, it still makes sense for you to understand the code. So keep training at reading code and understanding code. So yeah, it's a little bit of a, a discussion in the industry, of course. It might not motivate you anymore to learn. And I get that questions a lot about people that are kind of more senior, and they are worried about nobody willing to learn the profession of software developer, and they often think about it as a craft system that somebody needs to learn. When I talk to more newer people in the industry, they would say, well, AI is a great way for us to learn way faster than you have to do it, because I can ask it questions all the time. I can actually have it solve my problems. It's instantly there as a mentor as well. So it goes in both ways again. And this is an example of a company that is specifically hiring a reviewer, right? And it's a company that builds agents and code generation tools, but it explicitly said there's certain pieces that are still need review, and that's why we need you. So reviewing is still a skill that's very much in demand to do this. But you might find it boring, so it's not for everybody, but you might still like it. So we don't know yet how the impact is. Will the teams will be bigger? Will it be smaller? But if you look at the domain knowledge, now that is kind of overlapping to build a good team. Like you have different specialists, and they kind of have a bridge, and they're more like full stack overlapping. But what does that happen with AI, with the knowledge? Maybe AI has a lot more knowledge, and we only need like 2 of those people that kind of know a little bit of everything. So you don't know what are the right profiles and how that's changing our industry as well. So I already mentioned learning as a new dev, onboarding, asking questions, great use case of the knowledge there as well. Now, we learn by exploring, asking questions, and so on. So how does an agent actually learn? So we have to think about not just the developer experience and the learning experience, but also about the agentic experience. Like, what does an agent see? How can an agent explore a system? What APIs are available to do this, right? So for example, in MCP, if you would just say, I have an API and I map the functions in my MCP function one by one, it's too granular, because an agent will ask for a certain kind of thing that it wants to do, a task. It doesn't think more in atomic things like first this function, then that function, But for APIs, this was useful, but not so much for agents. So we'll have to rethink this. Same with websites. Can the agent actually look at your website, or is it JavaScript generated and it's a bunch of crap and craft that you put in? So kind of that is important also for the agents as well. And we're learning this, and we're trying to store this. The simplest way, again, similar to the spec, is people started to create like memory markdown files where they kind of recorded sessions step by step. And so the system would improve what it had been doing because you could put that knowledge more in the context. Here's an interesting example from Devin where he said, like, I'm seeing you do all these questions, but then all of a sudden he says, I think this is important. We should really save this as knowledge. So it's proactively helping us to do this. It's not like it's taking away a little bit of the chore of saving, formatting, and helping us to write and detecting this. So it's a very improved form of kind of helping us to save that knowledge. It's good for both humans and AI, of course. And then if I have multiple agents, I want almost to have the shared memory across, much like you would have like a Notion or a wiki or anything that contains all the information that a user wants to see. We're going to build like memory systems that agents can do and see learnings from different agents or previous runs of the agents. That could be also beneficial, or it could also have a downside that one agent goes rogue, it infects the memory. It's almost like they're sounding too much to be similar to humans. And then that shared knowledge can be used across agents, but sometimes you don't want this because maybe there's too much information. So if I would put everything in one agent, so maybe I have similar to more specialists. I have a specialist for the code. I have one that's really good at debugging. I have one that is really good at making decisions. So sub-agents is one of the things that it allows you to avoid the overload of context, and every kind of sub-agent keeps its own set of the context. That's one of the problems. It tries to solve that there as well. And you will start seeing another breed of developer tools. It's kind of agents working together to solve a problem. And it's almost like a hive or a swarm. And one of the more notable kind of project is called Cloud Flow. And you can start a hive mind. You can start like a swarm on around a certain problem. So multiple things, multiple agents working collaboration as together as well. And then we do all that stuff, right? And all that knowledge is being captured. We can reuse that knowledge when we need to do a review. So it's not just in the code generation, but like another part or at support. So all those things is when somebody asks questions, the agent can answer. They have all the knowledge that was accumulated. They can, of course, improve the documentation if you say it's wrong, and it just captured more and more of that memory as well. So I made this picture of more of the emerging new dev workflow. We're going to deal with intent, going to write specifications. Specifications get broken down into plan mode. They get created into one or more parallel coding streams. We can take multiple pieces of the plan mode. Then all the pieces go into review, and there's like not yet like a very good way, but I've shown you a few ways of kind of reducing cognitive load in review. That get merged. And then during the whole piece of the process or every step, we capture the knowledge. And so the knowledge is beneficial for the whole workflow. And if you look at this, it's almost like your CI/CD, but on the developer's laptop. And that's why I think it's interesting is that if you say, where does it live in the SDLC? And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to use AI to improve my pipelines, I'm going to use AI to do my observability. But try to think about how this new emerging dev workflow is actually going to influence the CI/CD. Do we still have CI/CD centrally? Because we already did this. Like, what if the agents do the communication for us? So that's kind of like why I can't really put my finger yet on how this is moving on the SDLC. Yes, you can use AI in that process already, but I think by looking at the developer workflow, we'll probably see emerging patterns on deployment workflows, and parallelization is just one of those emerging things right now. Maybe we want to have an observable system that keeps track of all the coding agents to see what they're doing. We want feedback. We want to ask them questions. I haven't seen a good solution. This has a video. Unfortunately, I can't show a video here, but have a look at this as a way to look and see what they all did. So in essence, if they do more of the work, maybe we can become bolder. We can refactor more bigger code bases. It might sound scary right now, but you have to remember the current AI is the worst we're ever going to get. I hope that it always gets better in a good way. And with the words of Andy Campati, I think everybody was talking about chat last year. Now everybody's talking about like code generation. The big players are in there, so we definitely see a lot of improvements in the tools and the workflows and the results there as well. These were the 4 patterns. If you found them useful, let me know. Send me a message on LinkedIn or in the chat right now, or stay a little bit after for the social. Hope this was useful. Want you to also kind of notice that like good developers, senior developers, they understand a bit of operations, they are good architects, they actually understand the business, and they also understand and keep the knowledge up to date. So it's almost like it is driving us to become a better developer and to keep doing things that senior developers actually are naturally doing as well. So one more thing, if you enjoyed the whole kind of presentation and all the pieces I put in there, I'm actually throwing together with the folks from the AI native dev community a conference, an in-person conference in New York. The CFP is now open. You can see on the right that it's going to be about specs, about code generation, how to do better review, how to learn the knowledge, and then getting stories out that people have been doing industry of things at scale. So I hope you can join me there. Do let me know. I'm going to be happy reading your submission to this as well. And you can find me, on my LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel, or you can visit the website AI Native Dev. We have a podcast. We have the landscape there, various different events, meetups that we organize in the community. And I hope now to answer some questions of you. And thank you very much for listening to my 103 slides. Thank you.
Patrick, yeah, the whirlwind of links and ideas, fantastic. I'm sure it'll take us a little while each individually to unpack with the slides, which will be, I'll put up with the video and the slides on our event page. It'll be up by Monday. I'll have them done before then. It's usually done before Monday. So if you can't stick around for questions or need to rewatch or get the links later, they'll be on the GDG event page. Like Patrick said, they're having an in-person conference, and we have people from around the country on. If you're nearby in New York City or have been always wanting to take a trip there and maybe do something with your brain at the same time, being in New York, definitely check out the conference. So we do have a little bit of section here where we can do a few questions. If you put them in the chat, I'll read those out loud. And then after a little section of questions, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll do, if you can stick around, we'll do virtual networking, meaning networking, but just online. I'll make everybody a presenter. You can turn on your camera, turn on your microphone. It's not mandatory, but if you'd like to stick around, that would be great. So let me scroll back. There's actually quite a few anecdotes and stuff in the chat, but I think there are also some questions. Looks like Dan Cohn had a question back at the beginning, thinking about what are the current best and worst practices for applying GenAI to software development and cloud development. So obviously we saw a lot of practices throughout the life cycle. Anything that you would say like, hey, don't do this, or hey, you really should try and do this?
like one of the patterns that I noticed that is good software delivery practices are actually beneficial to AI. And it sounds like in the beginning, everyone said, "Oh, we don't have to care about the code anymore. Like just do whatever." Um, if you like write better examples and specifications, it's helpful. If you write better documentation, it's helpful. If you write tests, it's helpful. It's almost like the other day I was in a company and explaining kind of this, and they said, "Oh, we should really like improve our code base." It's like, so it took AI for you to improve your code base. That's maybe like an anecdotal story on like something I learned along the way. So.
Oh yeah, that's good. So the best practices seem to be, it's like amplifying the need for things that were best practice before. Now they're just more important to do them now, so that the AI can understand like what do you want me to do?
Yeah. Smaller chunks of work
Yeah.
helps. Like think through, have like a review, diversity of opinions. So all the things that are helpful, like in the traditional software delivery.
All right, great. I'm scrolling down through the chat again. Let's see. The chat is scrolling weird for me at the second, jumping around. Nice comment from Randall about some of the things that you're talking about, that breaking things, doing good software engineering practices, and using the AI, leveraging it there, but not trying to do one-shot vibe coding to create an application. Javi does TDD with an AI agent called Charted Coding.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Is there a question there?
Maybe I can discuss that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is a certain addictiveness to having like a TDD loop, right? Like you write the test and then it kind of does it, similar to you write the spec and it kind of goes it. The systems are still a little bit too slow for us to kind of like not get like bored out while it's doing. But the more we get in parallel, but that's a different pattern because that is context switching between different things. So it's not very helpful. But I found with the more agentic coding that people do get more into the flow again. And because it's just like so addictive. Some called it like a slot machine. Right? I'm just gonna ask the AI to generate. Oh, it did a good thing. Dopamine. So kind of in that way. So, but the real TDD, it's probably still too slow. And I mentioned that a little bit. Like that's what's waiting right now.
Yeah. Once I can have like a whole AI rig in my laptop, and I can it doesn't have to go across the network. I think that will be super awesome. All right, looks like there's another link there. Jay Chan is wondering about, of the IDEs that you've used, is there one that you see that's more futuristic or ahead of the others? Like what, if you're just starting out now, what I use, Cloud, Cursor, Windsurf, and any really grabbing you?
So it's my personal take, so don't quote anybody more than me on that. But so what I see is that in general, they do the same thing, right? Like, so what's the differentiator? Often is either a very, very, very specific thing that a tool at a certain time has a competitive advantage on, because they were the first to do this. So you see a lot of switching from one tool to the other, kind of moving. Now, there is a gradation also, I would say, the way that the tools pitch themselves to different audiences, right? So a Copilot, if you've been using GitHub, right, your bread and butter, but they have to cater for a lot more users in a way. So they're more conservative on new features, robustness, security, and so on. So on the innovation cycle, it might be a little bit slower, but eventually it'll get there. And I actually recommend kind of using more of their beta program, which is pretty stable. But Anyway, that's one thing. Now, then you get into which one is the most innovative, like bringing out like from their own research. I feel the most known one is commercially, not only commercially, but like more publicly known, is probably Cursor. Windsurf, Cursor, I don't see that big of a difference, but somebody will kind of have to explain it to me. And then there's more of I target an enterprise audience with legacy code, which is a different breed than the indie coders, where you have more of a source graph or augment that have their tooling, right? Because they focus on niche languages, more bigger code bases. So that's kind of their thing. And then like the ones that are open source and more experimental, I like RuCode, Clang. They're like they're edgier probably than Cursor, but they don't have the money to do all the research. So, but you can contribute and see the code. So that's helpful. And then on more of the CLI level, I think the one leading the pack right now is Claude Code, to me clearly. I think OpenAI Codex is definitely like there, but it's not that polished, not that advanced, but it will catch up, I'm pretty sure. I think Gemini made a strong entry by having a robust CLI documentation, more enterprise ready, something to use, and it feels a lot less experimental than a Codex that was just like put out there, but it gives that more of an enterprise grade of tools in there. Anyway, that's my like summary of the different tools. And so it's more like, what is your use case? What's your type? An appetite for new features in there, but eventually they, within a couple of months, they copy all the features from them. So it doesn't matter that much.
So, it sounds like you could find one that meets your use case, even if it's behind on features right now, they'll probably catch up. And maybe it's not, maybe it's not, choosing it as not choosing life or death. Find one that you like, that works for use case, and you should.
And the interchangeable standards now, like in agents, MD, and so on, we'll see more of kind of a cross tool standardization. So that's actually great to switch. So I feel it's less of a burden to switch from one tool to the other. They're either VS Code clones from each other. I would say that. And the CLI, well, you got to learn the CLI, but you just look for the same kind of patterns to do that. So.
All right, one more question, and then I'll have a non-technical question. Then we'll take a break and do the networking. So Sam, says he's just thinking out loud. He or she, actually, I'm not sure if it's he or she, but Sam is thinking out loud. What will make someone a great software engineer going forward? Is it learning new languages or machine learning and going deep into one, or is it getting really good at using AI tools with solid workflows?
Yeah. My take on this is you'll need the specialists for more support or like languages or things where it goes wrong, right? But that's the same thing with a COBOL person right now, right? So they do have an industry, and that still makes sense. I think there's truth in a dev doing the coding, understanding coding, but understanding more of the operational side. That's kind of the DevOps story as such. So it doesn't, if you're just doing it in the coding and you don't care about like the supervision, but that's again good practices of caring about both of that. And then you have the difference between, do I only care about the business part and less about the code, or do I actually care about the craft in there? So what do you need to learn? I think there's like in a company still places for the different types where you want to fit. The craft person would still have like a review and the weird, or maybe the training or something like that. So it depends. I don't see the path is different. What is different though is somebody call it AI fluency. Do you understand how an agent works? What makes a good prompt? What makes a good spec? kind of those things. So those are things that you need to learn. Do you need to understand machine learning? Don't think so that much. Like, it's one of those conceptions I need to understand, like PyTorch and all the things. I don't feel, but it, like, if you want to understand something, the more and deeper you know, that's fine. But you would not know that for the coding. But one of the problems right now is, how do you select actually, sorry, the best model? Right? You don't know. And actually, nobody knows. There's no industry solution to kind of like compare and say, it's the best for this, it's the best for that. So it's actually where the word vibes come from, is people comparing models and they say, we can only do vibe checks. And then they apply this to coding and call it vibe coding as well. So.
All right. So
Yeah.
I do have one quick one from Jay, and then a final non-technical question. Do we need to be jack of all trades instead of just a SME for a particular vertical, since we only need to write specs? So should we do a little bit of everything? I mean, just looking back at the slide, you did say those 4 quadrants that a good developer is like doing little pieces and parts of all those already. Does that make a jack of all trade? What are your thoughts?
Well, obviously, when you're new, it's hard to learn because you take some time on learning each of the pieces. Then you learn how to talk to the business. Then you learn more operational side. So, jack of all trades. There's somebody made the comparison is right now a lot of people think about agents as an agent that does everything. So the agent is the jack of all trades. But we will have specifically trained agents, and already gave the example, maybe there's a thinking agent or a reasoning agent that does that. But what if it's being trained on specific business tasks or specific actions, like, I don't know, like a word or something, kind of model. So you see the LLMs might be helped by smaller language models that do better at certain tasks. I've seen some people train DevOps models for specific tasks, like fine tune that. So the difference is, the way that person explained it, forgot the name, but your specialized agents might have fewer times of interaction with your SDLC, but when they need it, they're more crucial and they get a higher salary. The jack of all trades might have to work with the effect of, I'm going to do lots of it, but I'm going to be not the specialist, and I'm just going to do a lot of different things, and that's my bread and butter, but I'm going to be cheaper because I'm not a specialist. So anyway, that is one way of thinking about it. So we'll have like specialized agents and the more jack of all trade agents as well. So both will kind of stay existing.
All right, no, that's great. So the final question I ask this to all our presenters, it's a career question. So thinking back, if you could advise your younger self, or sometimes we have some college kids that join in, maybe it's some career advice to a young student. Any kind of habits or advice or habits for people to take on, or advice that you'd give them to, as they go out into their career and try to make the best of it?
Well, I can explain what worked for me. That's not moral advice, but something like, I found what makes me tick is actually learning. And so realizing that after so many years, that like explains a lot of things. Like, I want to like be there with something new. I like a little bit of the chaos because it's a learning phase. I like to present, but I actually am pretty shy at presenting in the beginning. But the reason why I presented was actually because when I share, I learned that people share knowledge back to me. So that was a learning again. And so also choosing my jobs, kind of the role that I'm looking for, is more in that kind of space. But that also allowed me to say, I'm going to be in almost like a repeatable thing every 2-3 years. I wanted to actually explore another thing. It's not because I'm bored, but I felt like I'm good enough and now I'm off to the next. And that actually has allowed me, and that was probably a side effect of it, that I started understanding different roles in the organization. And that eventually probably brought me to DevOps as the translator who has done almost like that job, that job, that job. So I have empathy and I can talk the language and the way people think. So that's something on hindsight that like felt into a pattern of something which I didn't know probably, kind of when I started my career. I was just like, curious about a lot of things. I didn't know what was actually taking me there.
No, that's great. Kind of stay if you stay curious, maybe put yourself into places and positions where you have a chance to learn new things. Maybe don't be afraid to explain those things to others, even if you're not yet an expert on it. So you can have some collaborative learning. Yeah, I think that's really great, Patrick.
Cool.
So thanks for coming and spending time with us here at GDG Cloud Southlake. Everybody, thank you for joining from around the country, around the Texas area and around the country, probably even around the world. Not everybody said where they're calling in from. We do have these online events once a month, so look forward to speakers that look interesting to you. If you do have recommendations on who you'd like to see here, let me know. We'll try and get them lined up. If you are in the Dallas area, we do have in-person networking events, no speakers, but we get 70 to 80 people out at the Flying Saucer in Capel once a month. So check us out there. You can see our full calendar online. So yes, once again, Patrick, really thank you for joining us tonight.